Okay, welcome everybody.
Isn't it greetings, everybody?
That is greetings, everybody. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to a supplemental episode of Star Trek Tempest. We've now finished releasing season 1, and we're going to jump into our season break, which we still don't know how long it's going to go.
Indefinite.
But, yeah.
I hope you enjoy an indefinite delay.
We will
pick an end date on the break part.
Figure that out. Yeah. So, like we did in the mid-season break, we're going to just do some kind of supplemental episodes, shooting stuff.
Shooting the proverbial stuff.
Yeah, stuff. And today we're just gonna shoot the shit about season 1 a little bit. Myself and Ryan and Tara are here. We're actually all in the same room.
In person.
That's right.
The last time we were all together was a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. What is the world?
So, you just start at the beginning of the season? I
Sure.
guess?
So I have a list pulled up of all of our episodes and some and the little blurb that Brian wrote with each release. So it will kind of jog our memories as well as yours, I assume.
Except for Cole, who has
Except for Cole.
all of it memorized.
Who knows them forward and backward.
For all of you supposed Starship Tempest fans out there, our nephew Cole has listened to each episode many times, according to his mom, my sister Juliet. So Cole, good job. You are the king of Starship Tempest.
That's right. We should send him a crown and a banner.
Well, spoilers.
Sorry. Okay.
We'll cut that part.
We'll cut that part. Cut that part. Okay.
cut.
All right. So, also, I wanted to say that the whole needing to jog the memory thing is important for us because we're so far removed, actually, from recording season 1. Because it just came out, the finale just came out for all of you, but we recorded that quite a while ago. So
A long time.
About a year ago.
a year ago already.
Already,
Yeah, according to the created date on my master files on the computer, this Entropy's Demise was exported on July 13th of 2020. So that was 14 months ago.
Holy moly.
No, that doesn't
But that can't be right,
because
right?
we released it in May of 2020.
You know what? Some of these...
Someone's a time traveler.
Ooh!
Spoilers.
Did we didn't upload them wave? I'm looking at the MP3 file. So anyway, okay, that information is useless and wrong. So disregard.
Never mind. Okay, so speaking of Entropy's Demise, let's see here. The very first episode, it says, the Tempest embarks on her first mission and investigates a series of strange phenomena on a Federation colony, and in the process discovers an old enemy lurking in their midst.
Which I think we're also going to find those little blurbs get shorter and shorter as time goes on.
The crew does stuff.
Yeah. By the end of the season, you're like, I don't know, I'm going to bed.
I know, here, fine.
So, so I think we talked about this a little bit in the mid-season, but the fact that, so the first 3 missions are from one of the Mission Compendium books that Modiphius, the publishing company, put out.
Oh, okay, so that wasn't one you wrote.
Correct. So mine, quote unquote, don't start until mission 4.
Okay.
And then, because we did a couple of session zeros ahead of time, before we just sort of started playing, and then we're like, we'll just keep going until we feel like
we'll figure this out.
Yeah, and it took 3 or 4 missions? Because I remember distinctly looking through the book and going, which ones do I like and which ones do I want to do, and we got pretty close to the bottom of the barrel of the ones I really didn't like in the process of getting ready to do of actually recording and releasing whatever the first one was. So so actually Entropy's Demise and That Which Is Unknown I think they turned out well.
Yeah.
They're not my favorite in terms of pre-written scenarios.
Okay.
Well, because you didn't write them.
No, part of that was also I specifically, so Border Dispute, the third one, was my favorite in the whole book, and so I specifically held off on that one to be the last non-original one.
I see.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's interesting, man.
It's interesting, man. Okay, because
So-
I remember while we would play the ones from the book, we all had like that huge file open. It was like a giant PowerPoint presentation, and you had to like scroll through to find like. Do you remember? We had to go like.
You're talking about the rule book?
Well, yeah. I don't know if it was the rule book. It must have been the rule book or a guidebook or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But the like computer version of it. So everybody would say like, go to page 222. That's how you do fight stuff. And, like, we were trying to figure this out together.
We did a lot of how many missions did we do before we actually recorded? Because we did several test missions, and I know we've talked about this, but in some of the previous supplemental episodes. But it's just funny to go back and think about how bad we were because we couldn't figure out how to do anything. It's like I want to dodge. Okay.
15 minutes of
It's like
How do I
how do I dodge? And like, didn't you, Tara, at some point find in the rule book how to lay prone?
Yeah.
All
right,
good. We have to roll to lay prone.
Yes, one of my minor actions is going to be lay prone.
So we did, if I remember right, the first thing we did was there's a starter mission at the back of the rule book.
Yeah.
And that's like a mini mission. So that was our very first thing. And that was the one where I had it sort of looked over the rules ahead of time, and then we actually got started, and I was like, I have no idea what to tell any of you to do. And that was the day, I remember randomly, the first time SpaceX launched a reusable rocket from the West Coast.
Oh,
because if you remember,
same day?
it was like whatever day that was. Because
Cool.
5 minutes beforehand, I was like, hey guys, can we push it back 15 minutes because SpaceX is about to launch, and I can see it from my house. So
That's right.
Oh, that's right. And then you jumped on the Skype call because it was before we actually.
But I was on the corner.
Yeah, and you were walking back.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, so part 2 of Entropy's Demise said, the Tempest crew tracks the source of the anomaly to an old abandoned starship adrift farther out in the solar system.
USS Hamilton.
But the enemy may have beaten them to the scene.
That's such good writing.
Bum, bum, bum! If that was
And that would be the creation of one Mr. Eel.
Oh, that's where Eel came from.
Yeah.
That was the episode where you played shuttle chess.
Where I just
shuttle
moved
test.
the shuttlecraft a few feet.
Du-
and lost
du- du-
it.
du- 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 du.
God, that's so silly.
And Mayfly. I think Eel was created before then, but yeah, Shuttle Chest is
I
there.
don't
Well, I thought Eel was one of your
Yeah, I think
your
Eel
player
was-
your NPCs that you created.
No,
Well,
no,
Eel
no.
is definitely a name that you guys came up with.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because he was
An eel.
because electroplasmic systems, and I was like scream laughing because he was an eel.
Let's pause for just a second. I have to adjust the mic. We're not going to edit this, so you're going to hear some rumbling here, but it's starting to drift down.
Rumbly, 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 rumbly. Do you want to tighten it?
Yes.
Oh, aha.
Hopefully,
arm part?
I might have to do that a couple more times, but that should be
Okay.
good for now.
Part 3 said the Tempest away team races against time to find the weapon plans before the Hamilton disintegrates around them.
I see what you did there, Brian. Races against time.
Ah.
Why?
Because it was a ship out of time. It was a ship that was
Oh,
caught.
right.
Yeah, it was the tachyon eruption or whatever it was. That,
Yes, I definitely confidently did that on purpose.
Our son just walked up to the table, took a juice, and left. So, he's 2.
All right, so that 3-parter was our very first mission.
Yeah, and that was the first time where I took a big risk as a player, and what was the solution that I decided to offer up the Hamilton to
the deal,
to the commander, and you're like, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, that was fun.
And that actually turns out to have some ramifications that the audience will find out about in about 10 years from now.
10 years from now.
Based on our current production rate.
So our second mission was called That Which Is Unknown, and I want all of you to know that we mercilessly make fun of Brian for every episode title or mission title. But they're great.
But
and
that's
they're
not
fun,
mine.
And they're
That's from
very
the book.
Star Trek. Oh, I see.
So,
So there. Well, yeah, I was gonna say that that's not so bad, but later on,
they get more pretentious.
Because way down the road there is actually going to be another That Which Is title
awesome.
that is mine.
That which is totally known.
That which is Jon
And
Snow.
yeah, so that was like the last one in the book that I was like, okay, because there was one more that I really didn't want to do. I just didn't like the premise of it.
Oh.
And then Border Dispute, the next one was
Yeah.
like, okay, that's my favorite, so I want that to be the bridge between the two.
What was That Which Is Unknown, though? I edited the whole thing, and I don't remember it at all.
That Which Is Unknown says the Tempest arrives in the Angosia system to witness the demonstration of a new torpedo technology.
Oh, right.
But suspicions arise almost immediately about ulterior motives on the part of the project's chief scientist.
That is good speed punching, socking the scientist in the jaw on the bridge.
And you're like, I'm being serious now. Is this your action?
Yeah, that's the thing you want to do. Yes.
Yes. My action in space combat is to punch this guy in the face.
And that was so for each of the first three missions, because the missions in the book are set in like the TNG like Dominion War-ish area, but our thing is set a few decades before that. So for each of them, I made a couple of like adaptations so they would fit the area a little better. In that mission, that book, do you remember the TNG episode with the like shields that work in the sun, and Dr. Crusher has to figure out the mystery, and then it turns out it's the alien guy that was he was pretending to be dead, but he wasn't actually dead.
Yeah.
So in the book, that the scientist is from that species, but in that episode, that species, like they established that species has only recently been encountered and discovered. So I changed it, and I actually changed it to the planet from the James Cromwell episode of TNG.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the one where they have the super soldier and they chase the super Roga Danar.
Yeah,
that episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Angosians. That is what the Angosians are.
That was the episode in TNG where you could physically escape a transporter beam.
Yes.
That was one of the dumbest things in the history of Star Trek.
Nope, that doesn't
and it
work
happened
out.
on TNG's watch.
And one of the all-time greats. Picard is going to make a haughty speech about the right thing to do, and then just fuck off, and leave these people with an absolute mess to deal with. Like he literally precipitates an armed coup of this planet's government,
and says
like, "Well, you see, you guys have some things to talk about. We'll just be on our way then."
Part 2 of that was the Tempest races to chase down the thieves and recover the prototype before they can return to the safety of enemy space.
Oh, and that was also for the first time where you guys just rolled so goddamn well. that was really like that was
first of many.
That was the first time where, as like at least in the recording part, where I felt so thrown for a loop as to like. I know what the book says is happening next, but I have no idea how to make that work.
Because not only we rolled so well that we destroyed the prototype torpedo.
Yeah, and I sort of had to come up with some bullshit about how it was still
relevant or still useful information as it is been atomized.
Yeah.
The pieces are still out there, and you still need to get them. Oh, okay.
Yeah, a very classic early Star Trek plotting there.
All right, so the next one was Border Dispute. Let's see. The Tempest crew comes to the rescue of another starship that has accidentally crossed into the Romulan neutral zone. But the Romulans have other plans, and the entire situation may not be as accidental as it first seems.
So, yeah, that's the last one from the book, and that was always my favorite from the book. And that's pretty much the same. There isn't a whole lot of it. I changed what the ship was.
I see.
But that's about it. And that was great because that's our first solid mystery.
Oh.
Where there's a clear solution.
That was with the morgue and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I remember that one because I really enjoyed solving that puzzle.
Yeah, because you were the one who figured out to do an autopsy on the captain. And don't just...
And I don't know if you remember, but that...
It looks like the mic is actually going to fall.
Why is it going to fall?
All right. Sorry about that, everybody.
Sorry. What on earth were we saying?
Border dispute.
Right.
Oh, I was saying, yeah, the because that was crazy because in that moment, like I don't know how well you remember that morgue moment specifically, but you guys went back and forth, and you came real close to like not doing that autopsy thing.
Oh yeah.
And you guys talked about it for like several minutes, and like it was specifically, yeah, I want to do this, and everybody else was like, I don't know, that seems like a waste of time, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And you were almost like, yeah, okay, fine, I won't do, but you.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, at last minute, you're like, no, I'm going to do it.
That was
the key to the whole thing.
That was the first episode I remember really leaning in more than just like, I'm just here and playing, we're having fun, and that's fine, and I don't know what I'm doing. And I like, the other episodes were totally fine. Eel was fun, like, fine. But that was the first episode where I was like, well, wait, you didn't tell me it was going to be a mystery thing. I love a mystery thing. I'll do a mystery thing.
And that was also the first one, I think, where, like, there was definitely an element early on where, more so I think Ryan and Travis, but were like, if something didn't make sense, it'd be like, Brian, that doesn't make sense, you're stupid, you wrote that wrong.
You wrote that wrong.
Bang the table.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You messed up, Brian, and it was like, nope, it doesn't make sense. For a reason.
Yeah, right. Just
And
follow through with the why that doesn't make sense.
And I think Borders View was the first one where you guys were like, that doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it make sense?
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, speaking of, part 2 says, you're going to open a beer in. Suspicious that there's more to the Ellesmere situation than meets the eye, the crew of the Tempest work to repair the stranded ship while also uncovering the truth of the Ellesmere's predicament.
What I remember about this mission is that nobody could remember what the Ellesmere's name was.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody called it something different. And TJ especially was like butchering it left and right. I forget what name.
Well, there was a lot of Lord of the Rings references.
Nobody could get
And
it.
it was the first
The
Federation
Aemir.
starship that I named.
Oh,
So
don't
the only
ruin-
reason we're doing this whole damn thing is so I can name spaceships.
Part 3 said, the Tempest crew worked to uncover the real source of the Ellesmere's malfunction before the culprit can make it escape with invaluable intelligence.
And another example of you guys rolling super well, because that guy did his best to escape and got nowhere.
No. The next mission was called Incident at Ivex. It was
This
also
is Brian's first,
a
right?
It is.
three-parter.
It is
This is
indeed.
the first one you wrote.
Correct.
The Tempest arrives in the Ivex system where a delicate diplomatic situation is brewing. The Tempest must keep the peace between two rival dilithium mines, one Federation and one Klingon, while also upholding Federation ideals.
Also, the birth of our favorite NPC character. NPC character, non-player character. NPC squared.
It's an ATM
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah. He had to use his PIN number at the ATM machine.
Yeah. Which one?
Bach.
Oh, Bach. Yeah. Maddox and Bach. We're two of a kind.
Yeah. No, that was cool. Obviously, it was tremendously terrifying for the first one, but I think it turned out well. Like,
Yeah.
we talked about this, I think, on the mid-season break of like what the thing that I had in mind going into it was two things. One was like just making a good Star Trek dilemma that didn't have a like this is the obvious right answer, wrong answer thing. Like there's trade-offs here, and it's like it's what's the least wrong answer kind of thing,
Sure.
which I think we got to. And the other thing that the only thing I really wanted to make work in that was you have the two NPCs, and one of which is supposed to be your friend, but he's the asshole, and the other guy is supposed to be your enemy, but he's the one that you like.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to flip that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I think we got there.
And Bach is great.
Yeah.
Part 2 said the crew meet the Klingon next door. The Klingon next door neighbors, but are surprised by the welcome they receive.
And that's Bach.
And
That's Bach.
another complication may be lurking just around the corner. What is it?
The aliens.
Remember?
The bug things?
No, remember?
Oh, the face hugger things? And I was
No,
like,
No, that was Primum.
that's different.
This is the one where I almost let you die.
That was the
loopy-
worst. I was like, well, you said you wanted me to play this game. You can't kill me off now. This was your whole idea.
So, and truth be told, here's a little bit behind the scenes tidbit. Brian and I, had a conversation about getting you out of Teal, because you have stated on many occasions that you prefer to be a character rather than just use your own voice.
Well, that's true in real life.
Right. So you were I felt like you were uncomfortable for a lot of the first couple seasons because you, valid or not valid, you didn't think you were. You
hear that, Terry? Your feelings are not valid.
No, her feelings of insecurity were invalid, and Brian and I had a discussion about, well, maybe Teal can be overcome by mind aliens that change her personality, and that she becomes like a chameleon for the whole show to give you the opportunity to voice your vocal talents and your accents and things like that.
You guys said that ahead of time, I might have gotten on board, but otherwise I was like, I'm gonna get killed by Goob. You're gonna make me Tasha Yar immediately.
We did talk about it because I had a specific idea in mind that would have had to have been established in a particular mission later in the season, and I had worked out a whole okay, for this thing, okay, what's actually going on in that? And you and I talked about it, and eventually you said, no, I think I'm okay. And I'm like, okay, then we don't need to do that. But that didn't make it to Ryan.
So I was certain that this was the moment that Brian had scripted, that this thing was going to envelop you and then and change your personality so that you would be this chameleon kind of character that always was changing voices and depending on whatever the scene called for. And then as we got to the point where Teal was fully enveloped and I hadn't received an inkling of a hint from Brian, I was like, oh no. Maybe this is not.
And at the time, we were not we use Zoom now. At the time, we were not we're not video conference.
Yeah.
We're not looking at each other.
Yeah.
So Ryan couldn't even look at the screen and look at my face, and I could shake my head no or anything.
Later.
Do the hand across the throat.
Yeah. Anyway, and then that's why I eventually did fire on the aliens to free you. But I was convinced I was doing the right thing. And it turned out to be an awesome moment.
Yeah.
For actually, selfishly for Maddox, it was a pretty cool character moment.
Yeah.
But it also could have created some tension between. Yeah. And we joked about it, but we weren't comfortable enough in our own shoes as characters, as players, to role players, to really
get into that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I think we brought it up a couple of times.
We did.
Later
I'm not sure if we did it. Maybe the people who have listened, the fans here, can confirm. I remember we joked about it a couple times. Yeah. We definitely did that. Yeah. I don't remember if we actually ever played that coin.
Well, and that brings up something interesting because, we in real life are a married couple, and so
what?
It was not for your benefit, the listeners' benefit. Yes, I dragged you to Vegas. No. So us being a married couple in real life means I don't really want animosity and stuff. It will bleed over for me. I can't let it go. And so that's part of something I should leave at the door, but I have a hard time. So if I've had Holden and I having any kind of tension is also but he's my friend,
but Travis is my friend.
I know, it makes me want to call Travis and be like, I'm really sorry that happened.
All right, what's the next one?
All right, part 3 of Incident at Ivex was the Tempest crew braves the caverns of Ivex 2 to find the last piece of the delicate political/ethical dilemma facing them and have to make a choice
such a pretentious
between their commitment to seeking out new life and keeping the Federation safe.
And that's where this moment occurred, was in the final
episode. That was the moment. Yeah. Okay. So, the next one is Sabotage on Station 7.
Sabotage at Station 7. Thank you.
It says on. Thank you.
Oh, shit.
On all 3 of them.
Oh, yeah. No, because I was going back and forth between, so I guess I settled on.
At, on.
No, seriously.
At, on.
Sabotage
on.
at Station 7? Sabotage on Station 7.
On definitely feels better.
Yeah.
Okay, so part 1. Sentry Station 7, one of the Federation's crucial first lines of defense against the Romulans, has been sabotaged. The Tempest crew must discover the culprit and find out if the sabotage is a prelude to a Romulan invasion.
I have to give Brian a little bit of shit here because, as you well know, everybody, at the beginning of each mission, we do what we call a cold open. So we basically create a sound designed scene to set up the events of the mission to come. In Brian's cold open script, it was like exterior shot. Silent space station. And I was like, Brian, I can't work with that.
I can't do sound design for silent space station.
You could. You do the rumble. And... yeah.
Anyway.
When you did sound design for Our Fair City, and one of the writers put in, everything is very green. And it was like,
a
okay.
green gas starts emitting.
Yeah, like, I can't make it sound green for you.
Anyway.
Part 2. The plot thickens aboard Sentry 7 as the Tempest crew investigates both the station and its crew and begin to find details that don't add up. I remember this one. This was another mystery one.
It
right?
was, yeah. And so this
I
one
had
was
such good theories for this one too. I remember. I was very excited. Like I think.
well,
I
I think
figured
again, you got
I
on
solved the puzzle.
yeah, you got onto the right line of track
Yeah.
before anybody else did.
Yeah.
And this one was very much on purpose, like me trying to do Agatha Christie.
Yeah.
So it
that
was like
fun.
a Murder on the Orient
I like
Express
that
kind
too.
of thing.
Was that around the time? No, that's November. I was going to say that as a side story, Brian took a train trip one time, and on his train trip, he started texting me like all the stuff going on the train, and then parts of a mystery happening on the train, and he was like, "What should I do next?" And I was like, "This is very fun, and I hope it's not really happening." And I was like, "Well, you should go look at the dining car," and like, that was a fun little adventure for me. And probably just you sitting in a train seat for
I had 2 days to
many
kill in a
hours.
train. So, fun fact, that was 3 weeks before the entire world shut down because
Woof.
everybody was sick.
Yeah.
And I spent 2 days in very small, enclosed, confined places with many strangers.
Oh my god.
Right
Yeah.
before when that was around and nobody knew it yet.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
Part 3. The pieces are starting to come together for the Tempest crew, but will they put the right culprit in the brig before time runs out? That was a last minute that person, right?
Yeah.
That was we were like we've solved it. We don't know if we solved it. We're gonna to shoot that guy. Like,
And that was one where I was like, because now that that's mission 5, we're starting to find our groove a little bit in the sense of like I didn't want to. I wanted you guys to be able to like get there, but then not like open the door for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In terms of like, if you guys getting to the right answer, but still kind of doubting or hesitating, and like really make that push for yourselves, which I think you guys did.
That was good.
A fun fact also about that mission is it all stems from, if you remember, a couple years ago, I guess now they found that there was a hole drilled in the space station. The International Space Station, but from the inside. And for a day, the news was like, is somebody sabotaging this International Space Station? And no, it wasn't.
Turns out no.
Terrible.
Yeah, it was a manufacturing something, whatever. But that was the initial, like,
That's where you got the idea from?
Everything from that mission comes from, like, somebody drilled a hole from the inside, but why?
Yeah.
And everything comes from that.
The hole is coming from inside the station.
Okay, so the next mission is Tempest Tossed.
Mm-hmm.
But on our downloads here on, this is iTunes, I pulled it up. It has a prologue, part 1, an epilogue, and part 2.
Yeah,
So
I
let's talk about
I gotta fix that order.
why that happened that way.
So the prologue and epilogue is the point system stuff.
Okay.
We said the point systems, you and Travis first used the point systems, which is what the epilogue is.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're off with the second half of Season 1. Before we jump into the story of Mission 6, The Tempest Tossed, here's a quick prologue that introduces the homebrew XP system Brian created for this campaign and introduced to the players at the start of this mission. A couple players end up spending some points right at the end of the mission, so you want to make sure you give this a listen before the mission's conclusion. Okay, so that was to explain, like, we're changing stuff, and here's why, and...
Yeah,
okay.
so that's just kind of housekeeping business stuff.
So then part 1 of Tempest Tossed is, and season 1 is back underway. The second half starts with Mission 6, the Tempest Tossed, where a boring patrol. I read that wrong. I read that like boring a hole. I was like, who did? Because we were talking about holes. Where a boring patrol.
A boring patrol.
A boring patrol, yeah. It's another one for your list of words. Boring and boring. Where a boring patrol suddenly turns very interesting as the Tempest crew must decide not only the fate of a group of refugees, but also the freighter captain transporting them, who may be a smuggler with a heart of gold.
Yeah, there's a couple things that popped to my mind about. Now we're playing it.
Sorry.
We don't have the rights to that.
We have this was one of the episodes, if I remember correctly. This is your story, so interrupt me. That when we went back and forth for a long time before we decided on the name of the ship, when we were first coming up with the show.
Yeah.
Like Tempest was not necessarily the first choice.
It was
of
a front
everybody in the
runner,
group.
but
Yeah, right. But then we had a few back and forth, but you were excited about this title because
For this mission.
Yeah, because it was going to be Tempest Tossed regardless, correct?
Yeah. Because this is also the first pretentious mission title. Because the Tempest Tossed comes from the poem on the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. You're something, the Tempest Tossed. I lift my lamp as I the golden door.
the Tempest Tossed. That's interesting.
But the fact that the ship was named Tempest was like, oh, that's awesome.
That's cool. Yeah.
I can't tell them for like another 6 months, but it's awesome.
And I know we've mentioned this before, and I think it was in the mid-season break, but the reason why we went with the Tempest is because all of us were in a play in college directed by Brian, and it was Shakespeare's The Tempest. So
I wasn't in it, but I went to see it.
Correct. Yes,
And
I'm sorry.
I think I did the videography, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, you did. Mm-hmm. So you were part of the team.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was when Tara and I had just started dating, I think.
I don't know.
Regardless.
What year was Tempest?
What year was that?
What year is it?
2005. Whenever
five.
it was this year after the 3 hurricanes hit Florida back to back to back.
Yeah.
That was 2004.
Because it was originally going to be the fall production, and then we had to postpone it. We had to postpone the Tempest because Florida had experienced too many tempests.
Yeah. Too many Tempests.
Yes.
Too on the nose.
Okay, so that was a little digression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, part 2 of Tempest Tossed was the Tempest faces down an emboldened Cardassian enemy while wrestling with the dilemma of what to do with the refugees and smuggler in their midst. I remember this one.
And this is a great example of like me like having this great idea of I've got this great dilemma to set up that they'll argue about and it'll be great, and you guys blow right past it. Because there was like the whole thing was like, okay, you've got these group of poor refugees, but if you don't give them back, maybe you're starting a war. Needs of the many, needs of the few, and you guys are like, no, just bring them on board.
Well, that was...
That's okay.
Yeah. That was one of the first episodes where when we stopped recording, it didn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
And I texted Brian. Well, I talked to Ryan first because he came out of the office and I was making a face. And he was like, what's the face? I was like, I'm not happy. That didn't go like I wanted. I wanted to do a different thing. And what about that guy? And blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I don't know, text Brian. So I texted Brian and I was like, hey, so is there anything I could do after the fact? Because I'm like, it's not sitting well with me, the end of this episode. And he was like, yeah, actually, you could spend XP and you could, change something. What do you want to do?
And the timing is so perfect because we had just set up the system for that episode. And those were the two things of that episode was like, what are you going to do with the refugees and what are you going to do with this guy?
Yeah.
And the refugees you blew right past.
Yeah.
There was a discussion about like what to do with Loon.
Yeah.
But then you guys ended up going in that direction. But then I thought it was really awesome that we then pulled the XP point system in immediately to mess around with it. So.
Yeah.
But in a way, there really was no. If I remember correctly, we didn't really have much of a moral conundrum with refugees because it was spelled out in your briefing that once they set foot on a starship and ask for
asylum,
it shall be granted. according to Federation policy. So I think we as players were just like,
Well, they're okay now.
Now they're on our ship, so now we have.
Yeah, well, so the idea behind that was to make the decision to bring them aboard the hard one.
Yeah.
Of like essentially keep them on the piece of shit starship that is about to blow up.
And
Well,
we
why
were
would we do that?
No.
Because it might start a war if you did. But then you blew right past it and I was like, well, I can't start a war off of that.
Fun fact for those listening at home, Ash Loon is...
Don't tell them.
I
want people to find out for themselves.
How would they find that out
Do you want me to edit it out?
Somebody's got to be smart enough to do it.
Nobody would do that. All right, so the next mission was Above the Highest Sky. I really, like, of all the titles and all the pretentious whatever things, this was like one of my favorite titles.
It's one of my favorite titles too because we never even got to that point.
What?
We never showed them what was above their sky.
Oh,
in the
no, I
episode.
guess that's
People,
not.
yeah.
So the Tempest investigates a massive and mysterious ship in a remote area of
Wales.
Federation of Space. We'll have to fix it.
Oh, did I typo that?
It's
Yeah. This
Federation of Space.
Federation of Space.
This is the A grade example of I have a great idea, and it's going to be so cool, and it just does not play out that way at all. No, it's cool. It's because it's, and we even talked about this. I think at the end of the mission, in the sense of like, it's a straight ripoff of the Orville episode where it's the same thing. Where they find thing. Okay. And because I remember watching that episode and thinking. Because they the society won't deal with the truth of their reality, right?
Yeah.
But they bring the guy out to the room, and they show the video of the captain in the window out in space, and he goes, "Oh my god, okay, I get it." Blah, blah. And so even watching that episode for the first time, my thought was like, what if he did all of that and the guy still wasn't on board?
Right.
Like, what do you do then?
Yeah.
Like if you literally show the guy the window and he's like, "Nope, don't care."
No thanks. Yeah.
What was the idea?
I want to unknow this. The crew learned more about how the giant spacecraft works and finally manages to make contact with the locals, but making their way out might not be as easy as it was to come in. Is part 2. And part 3...
That's getting out.
I thought this was a really good episode because we had distinct missions. We had distinct parties doing different things. Like
we split off to do
this was
stuff.
the first time where we did, because again we've talked about it in the sense of there's kind of this cardinal rule in D&D where you don't quote split the party because it's just really hard to do that balance storytelling wise.
Yeah.
But just the way Star Trek works as a medium, as a genre, it's hard not to do that.
Right.
And I feel like this was the first mission where we did it and did it at least pretty well.
Yeah. Part 3, the situation inside the habitat comes to a head when the Tempest crew are caught in the middle of a coup attempt and have to make a decision that would irrevocably change the society inside.
Yeah.
Prime directive, yo.
The brain drainer. Remember Brain Drain?
Brain drain. I don't know that.
So the moral conundrum, or what partially was the fact that this society thought it had to give, for lack of a better word, a human sacrifice to the computer because of a malfunction in a glitch in the system.
Yeah.
And so it was a coincidence that the computer rebooted after somebody was either tossed or thrown or fell into there, but they it just became part of their culture that they had to sacrifice anytime that warning popped up.
But then also the actual dome that would have shown them because originally the idea was you grab the Pope or whatever and you show him the truth and change things that way, right?
Yeah.
But the idea was that you would do that. The Pope would say, "I don't care," blah. And so then the dilemma would be do you just flat out reveal it to everybody?
Yeah.
And does that wreck everything? Does that make everything better?
And if they're inside of a ship, if they're in a civilization inside of a ship, does that count as against the Prime Directive?
That's exactly.
Because it's not a planet and it's not a.
Yeah. It's a self-contained culture, so that's the debate, right?
That was exactly the idea, right? Because whoever built the ship, and it was the same, and I made sure to that we hit that point, was that the people living inside was the same culture, the same people, community as the people who built the ship. They just forgotten. So does that count as a new culture, a distinct culture? Does it not? And that was kind of the idea.
Did we touch on that much? Did we satisfy your itch on that?
We definitely talked about. Oh yeah, it definitely was a topic because you guys you said, or I think Goodspeed he set up the button.
Correct.
I remember there was the button that like got knocked out of his hand, and you guys actually managed to grab it again. And no, because I remember thinking that because you guys did talk about it, and I remember thinking ultimately the decision that Maddox made, I feel was very not Kirk. I feel like Kirk would have opened the thing. Yeah. And even Picard probably.
Space.
Yeah. Yeah. And so afterwards, thinking once we had the mission and you had made that decision and that was settled, I was imagining what the Federation Council was probably thinking when it came in. It was thank God one of these assholes finally didn't just do it on themselves, take care of it themselves, and left it for us.
We got our guy.
Not like that Kirk bastard.
The guy who didn't push the button.
The guy who didn't just fuck up an entire society because he felt like he thought he should.
He had the moral authority to do so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, the next mission, we're almost through all the missions already, is Boats Against the Current, Part 1. The Tempest escorts one of the Federation's most renowned scientists on an expedition into Klingon space to find an ancient artifact that could make the Klingons an unstoppable force if they were to find it first. Why are you laughing?
Because my favorite line in all this was we were stymied, and then at some point it might have been me, I don't remember, but somebody turned to Brian and goes yeah, archaeologist, what should we do on this archaeological expedition, archaeologist? And it was because we were what do we do? Wait, why don't we ask the guy whose job it is to do this? We were supposed to be helping. You were oh yeah, okay, fair.
Yeah, this was definitely the idea here was gonna try to do a more classic D&D dungeon crawl in a Star Trek.
Hello, Logan.
Hey, buddy. Yeah, the classic D&D. The party goes into a dungeon and deals with traps and booby traps and hidden whatever, blah blah blah, and that's it. And it did not. It did not go that way well at all.
It was cool though. There were a lot of machinations in the episode itself. There were a lot of mechanics that we had to go through that were cool. The getting across the energy floor and the orb.
Oh yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It just felt.
Those were fun.
It felt like it felt like mini games inside the bigger game. And
that
was cool. I
cool.
really enjoyed that as just a role player.
Part 2 said the Tempest crew with Dr. Galen ventured deeper into the ancient site and past obstacles to their goal, those mini games, racing to find the artifact before the Klingons or an Andorian treasure hunter beat them to the prize.
And I was so ashamed of myself later on because I never made the Dr. Galen connection to Picard until after I think you spelled it out literally.
Oh yeah.
As if you if I remember correctly, we were having a conversation and you mentioned it passively, oh yeah, and how Dr. Galen has that connection to Picard. And I was what are you talking about? I was
remind me because I don't know what you're talking about.
Brian.
There's the episode of The Chase in TNG where Picard's old professor and basically his surrogate father figure shows up and says, "There's this great secret, and I need your help to go get it." And it turns out that Picard almost became an archaeologist with him instead of going to Starfleet, and it made this weird rift in them. Huh. In that episode, there's a throwaway line.
Logan, sorry. Kid noise. Yay.
With your animal friends.
Oh, that was perfect for Tempest.
Spoilers for season 2, everybody. Jeez. I just said they should find those Easter eggs on their own.
I just said. That's not gonna. Awesome.
Good job, buddy. Good job. What?
Yeah.
Galen. There's a throwaway line in that episode of TNG where he says something to the effect of, I haven't spoken to him in 30 years or whatever. Oh. And so when first setting up the campaign, I specifically looked at Memory Alpha, the wiki, and tried to plot out, okay, what's interesting stuff is happening in these points that might be fun, like connections to make, and that was one of them.
That's cool.
And so I decided
I
that like
realized that.
the last moment that they reference in the chase of the last time we talked to each other would be the events of this mission.
Aha.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Part 3. The Tempest races to chase down the Andorian Tomb Raider before she can effect a getaway with the artifact. A situation further complicated by the untimely arrival of some very displeased Klingons. Are there ever pleased Klingons?
Yeah, Bach was pretty pleased.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Our final... No, is this... Yeah, no. Second, or penultimate.
Which, by the way, we do know what penultimate means. We'll get to that in a minute. There's a thing that happened at the end of the season I want to clarify.
Is the 4-parter, the only 4-parter, right?
Yes.
The only 4-parter, Captain in the Arena. And this was the episode where we finally were able to play with our, like, one of our best friends from college, from the college era, Matt Muller. And it was really fun.
Yeah, TJ couldn't be present for whatever reason. There was a work conflict, I believe, and to fill out the crew, we asked our buddy Matt to come in and participate as the guest captain.
Yeah.
Captain Prycor. And it was like that episode was so much fun.
Yeah.
And just hanging out with Matt, who has done a little bit more role playing than the rest of us, was great.
I didn't know that Matt was going to be there for the recording. Nobody told me. And I kept suggesting, like, hey, if TJ can't be there, maybe Matt would want to play. And Ryan was like, yeah, I don't know. We'll see if he probably works or something. We don't know. And so then we started the Skype call, because we did Skype in season 1. We started the Skype call, and then we were chatting for a little bit, and then a new Skype caller popped up, and I was like, who's this? Who's this? And I was like, it's Matt! I win! I think.
And it was awesome. He has my favorite line of the whole show in season 1, episode 1 of this mission was when I, as Maddox, declared that my knife of choice that I could select was a replica of the kukri worn by the title, or by the one of the main characters in my personal favorite movie, Reign of Fire, and Matt was talking about when Maddox comes face to face with the Gorn approaching Maddox and go, "Oh shit, is that the knife from Reign of Fire?" When I was editing, I stopped. I couldn't get past that line. I made several efforts to edit beyond that, but I was laughing far too. I brought you into the room.
Yeah, you gotta hear this.
I had completely forgotten about it. Oh shit, is that the knife from Reign of Fire?
So the blurb says, Captain Maddox is pressed into an unusual and distressingly familiar physical trial that will decide the fate of Gorn/Federation diplomatic relations. And then part 2, oops, I almost played it. Logan, this is not Flora's Lava. Stop jumping on everything.
We need to reset the show.
Part 2 says Maddox continues his struggle for survival against the Gorn captain as an electrical storm bears down on them both, while the rest of the crew aboard the Tempest race against time to find the advantage their captain needs to make it back alive. We were only allowed to beam down one thing or something?
Yeah,
right?
So you could talk and you could watch, but you could only beam down one thing.
One thing.
So, and that was all from the fact of, like, I had the cool idea of the premise, which was basically make Maddox do the arena episode, right?
Yeah.
But the problem with the arena episode is everybody else is just stuck on the bridge watching, not doing anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, how can I basically do that setup
for everyone,
but still give them something to do? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did so because Matt and I talked to it ahead of time, and I said, okay, this is what the premise is, and this is the general character, and you fill in everything else as much as you want. This is what I need it to be, and everything else you can fill in.
Yeah.
And so we talked about it, and I said, like, it's entirely up to you, but in terms of, like, what point of view you want to take, like, if you want it to be, like, a sort of Jellicoe situation where, like, you take over and maybe there's friction depending on, like, what's going on. And it totally didn't happen.
No.
I was,
like, cool, thanks. No.
Well, no, and it wasn't even, like, not saying that, like, Matt did or didn't do anything.
Sure.
It was, like, everybody else was like, no, yeah, that makes sense.
There's no friction at all. They were just like,
no,
sure,
yeah,
sure.
no, yeah, Pryker should be in charge. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
yep.
yeah, we'll do what you say.
Would you like some pot roast? Part 3. As the storm closes in, it becomes apparent that the Gorn isn't the only creature on the planet's surface that poses a threat to him. Bum.
Yeah, that was a that was a fun episode to do, mission to do, and the conclusion of it I thought was also incredibly enjoyable from my perspective because that uncharacteristic role for Maddox to do such a stupidly daring and physical
And actually pull it off.
Yeah. But I fully expected, because I had the plot armor. So we recorded the season finale and this out of order. So we actually, when we sat down to record this mission, we had already recorded the season finale for season 1.
Which we also did because of TJ had a scheduling thing,
Right,
and I would
right,
rather
right.
have had him. I would rather have recorded out of order than had him miss the season finale.
Yeah.
So that's why we
Right.
did it that way.
So I am very much alive and well in the season finale. So my thought process was, well, the worst that he could do is he could hurt me, and we could put something in that, he was in the hospital for a while.
Yeah, you lost a leg.
And like there was some time passed between
Yeah.
this episode and the next mission.
Interesting.
But what ended up happening was even more awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Which is he succeeded on that
Yeah.
that stupid role. But
Spoilers.
one of our other really good friends, Jane, texted me after the episode aired and was like, I thought that she was really upset, or she was pretending to be. She's like, I thought this was a duel to the death. Like, why is it
I
that all of a
demand
sudden?
blood.
Why is it that all of a sudden everybody's happy, even though the mission was a duel to the death? And I came up with some response about how, and I don't know if this even occurred to you, because we did just kind of say, oh, now that the worm's gone, everybody's happy, and we didn't really have a resolution to the conflict between the Gorn and Maddox. But I retconned it to Jane, saying, well, there was a duel to the death. It just happened to be that it was the sandworm who died. So during the conflict, somebody died, and it was the sandworm.
That's
and so that's
interesting.
why these two characters said, all right, this satisfies the rules of the contest.
No. See, so, and this is, I swear, this was actually my thinking going into it. The idea of it being a duel to the death was a red herring. That, like, it was a red herring on the part of the Gorn to, like, okay, we're setting up to do this, the way it was with Kirk, and we did it a couple of times that way. But this time, it was basically taking Arena and making it sort of Darmok.
Gotcha.
Was the idea.
the
And that
only
was
way I
kind
know
of
how to get
the realization that you had to get to, but you didn't really get there, but you killed the worm anyway, so fuck it.
Yeah, part 4 says, things come to a head as the storm and a giant alien creature bear down on Maddox and his Gorn counterpart, while other mysterious forces, oops, sorry, that's the bus alarm, I gotta go get one of our kids, while other mysterious forces attack the Tempest in orbit. I forgot that we were also being attacked at the same
By
time.
the Gorn ship,
Yeah.
I think to what I was just saying, I might be wrong, but I think I purposefully at no point refer to the Gorn captain as the enemy.
Right.
Maybe as opponents, but like I said counterpart there, and I said counterpart specifically.
Yeah, interesting.
Some kind of counterpart.
Finally, our finale 3-parter was Primum Non Nocere, which we gave Brian endless shit about.
And there are plenty of Star Trek episodes with
In
Latin
Latin,
titles. Thank you
sure.
very much.
None of which were written by Brian Finifter until this one.
Right.
So that's why we...
Thank you to Lois Finifter for making Brian take Latin in high school. In fact, I learned this morning and I'm exploiting now. So, I'm going to have to...
Hi, Brian's mom.
Yeah.
Who is editing this episode? That was a terrible cut. We're back from going to pick up the kids from the school bus. So we took about a 25, 30-minute break there, but you are now back with us.
Nicely timed to happen right at the midpoint of the episode.
I hope not.
So do the listeners.
No. We're almost done, I swear. Stay with us.
So Tara's finding her spot again as to where we were because we have a very short-term memory loss.
And we're just gonna sit here quietly until that happens.
I'm faster than you thought.
Sitting here talking to ourselves.
Primum.
Talking to ourselves. No, that's.
No, yeah, you
I
messed
ruined
it up
I
too.
lost it.
Nice try, Will. Okay, so Primum non nocere. Part 1. The season 1 finale kicks off with part 1 of Primum non nocere. I have to say it too many times, so that is The Tempest is diverted from an urgent medical relief mission to help an isolated Federation science team studying a mysterious alien force that may pose a greater threat to the Federation than any it's ever known before.
What could it be?
And what is it?
You don't remember?
Eyebrow waggle.
You actually don't remember what it was?
My brain is mush.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I do.
You remember.
Yes. Right. We can't talk about it. How
No, we can.
spoilery?
No, we can.
How spoilery can this be? Like,
Well, it's.
we're assuming
Well, we'll title this "Spoilers Season 1 Wrap Up."
spoilers upon spoilers.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, the whole season is released now, so there's no reason.
Yeah,
to...
this is our own podcast. This is the episode after the season finale, so we can talk about it. It's the Gorb.
the
Gorb.
The Gorb.
The Great Gorb.
Right. This weekend, because we are all together in person, I definitely bought a family pack of Gushers. So
I thoroughly loved this mission.
yeah, it was very fun, and TJ and I were so tired that we were both slap happy and not extremely helpful.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, the greatest example of, I have a great idea for a great story thing. That just shut down. I have this great, ethical dilemma of do you let a person go and do this thing that you know is the wrong thing for them to do, but they're certain it's the right thing? And Maddox is like, nope.
I literally said, I remember that. I literally said, no.
Nope. and when I'm like, okay, that's not the character. That is me going, shit. Okay.
Now, let's back up the train a little bit, though, because my favorite part about this mission is, of course, the Gushers moment. And that, I imagine, don't allow me to speak for you, but basically, getting into the cave was like the beginning of the cold open from your perspective. Like it was the start of the mission, right?
That's another, and that's a trope that comes up in D&D games and things where the GM has a thing that they think will take 5 minutes and it takes an hour, right?
Oh, no.
And that is the quintessential example of that.
We were supposed to beam down, shoot
a couple of bug aliens and pick up the guys and then get on with it.
Weren't we also rolling really badly that day? I feel like we kept trying to shoot them, but it wasn't working. And
No, you guys didn't even get to shoot until the end.
And this was a moment where, again, we recorded these out of order, but I did have it in my mind that I knew the next episode that we were going to record, which was Captain in the Arena, was going to be a very Maddox-centric episode. So I specifically made the decision to stay on the ship.
Right.
And put Goodspeed in charge of the mission. And while it was happening, I was like, why didn't I just go down there? But it couldn't have turned out better from a hilarity standpoint and from a Brian frustration standpoint.
You could have calmed down and said, calmed as in transmitted down and said, get on with it.
Oh, yeah. Nope.
Yeah.
We clearly proved we cannot be left unattended.
And you guys also very much in this one, because whenever you guys, make a decision or say, okay, let's go do this, I'll always, try to prompt just in this. And it's always, you guys always think it's a trap or something, but it's really just a general prompt of, okay, do you want to do anything else? Do you want to bring anything in terms,
It's usually me, because I want to problem solve, find a puzzle. I'm like, ooh, maybe it's something else.
Is that a clue, Brian?
No.
No.
He's like, no, damn it, just go.
I'm just making sure we're all on the same page with the crap you have in your bag. And this was...
Do you guys want to do anything else? You do not have to do anything else, Tara.
And that is what precipitated this moment, too,
Exactly.
because, beaming down from the ship, you're like, is there anything anything else you want to do? And then you're like, I don't know, pack a lunch? And that is what got us started. And TJ's like, what did you pack in the lunches, T? And thus began
and in real life, Logan, our youngest, had been teething and stuff. And so I'd spent a lot of nights awake for a lot of the night. So by the time we took this, which was like our small amount of free time or time when we had somebody else watching the kids, I was so tired. I was like, I want to be a good team player. I don't care. I'll throw a turkey sandwich.
This is also a great example of like just a joke in the moment, a like off the cuff joke on the moment actually like affecting the story, because the whole like when you guys finally get into the cave and TJ launches into his whole monologue of like teamwork and we got there and Dr. Teal, no, you did the right thing, but just for future reference, after he gets to the whole thing, just as the punchline basically to that, I said, yeah, and over your shoulder they're performing CPR on that guy.
I know, that's one of my favorite lines of the whole mission. I'm glad you brought it up.
And like that was never part of the plan. That was just, I thought that would be the funny thing, like the funny shot in that moment. But then that was actually Maddox's rationale later on in terms of like, no, you almost got your buddy killed, so of course I'm not going to.
Yeah.
And so that was cool.
Oh.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't consider that point of view. But yeah, but also the dude stole a starship.
He did steal a starship.
And
Yeah.
stranded he like marauded his ship marooned. I'm sorry, marooned his comrades on some alien planet. That dude was going to jail.
Part two
That was not a hard decision.
Part 2 says the Tempest comes to the rescue of the stranded scientists and catches up to the hijacked ship, only to discover it's being transformed by strange forces.
And that is, gosh, that setup that Goodspeed sent us off at the end of season 2 or episode 2 into episode 3 of this finale was.
And caution.
Yes,
Ooh,
we are armed. So stupid.
God.
I loved it.
So, part 3 was season 1 comes to an exciting conclusion as the Tempest crew comes face to face with the Project Specs aliens, an adversary unlike any they've ever encountered before.
So this is where I want to put it on the record that I know what penultimate means, and penultimate is second to last. Now, when we were editing this mission, it was It was a long mission. We had like 6 hours worth of material to cut down because we actually, and I mentioned this in one of the cutaways, in one of the cue moments, that we ran out of time, and then we went back and recorded the end of the mission at a later date. So we had a lot of material to cut through, and while we were editing the end of towards the end of the mission, we thought, because of how much material we had left, that we were absolutely going to need 4 episodes. And that's why at the end of episode 3 of the mission, episode 2 of the mission, we said, and now, join us next week for the penultimate mission. But then, while Brian and I were...
Then we actually got it down.
When we listened to it, it just didn't have the right flow. It was one of those, it was purely an editing decision that it just wasn't going to work as 4 parts because it just wouldn't have flowed the way that we wanted. And so we made the very challenging decision to then edit the next 2 episodes worth of time that we had down to 1, and we were editing together for the first time. Brian and I were actually like live streaming the edit together so that we could give notes in real time.
Which is smart.
It is.
Yeah,
That's how you do it from Chicago to California.
Yeah, so it might actually prove beneficial as we streamline the process going forward, but in the moment it was like we were editing right up until the hour before we published it. It was rough. But sometimes that happens.
And,
I can't believe you don't know what penultimate means.
For our non-Patreon members, the release date is Wednesday morning. But for our Patreon donors, it's Tuesday morning.
The day before.
24 hours.
Tuesday morning, which, if you're listening to this, that's ultra incentive for you to, become a Patreon donor. But
for as little as $1 a month.
I mean,
you get the early release benefit at $5 a month.
For as little as $5 a month.
There you go. So a whole day early. So that means the last minute scramble is for the Patreon donors specifically. Like, we've got to get this for them because they're helping make the ship fly. So it's like I keep thinking, like, it doesn't come out till Wednesday. Why are you guys in such a scramble on a Monday night? And then I'm like, right.
And for this one, like the last episode, the last mission of the season was, I mean, I feel like we were both like dragging ourselves across the finish line.
Yeah.
There was we had reached the end of the tank, both in terms of our creativity and our literal just exhaustion because it was so late. But it also was the precipice for what I now believe to be something that we will do going forward, which is creating a cold close.
Yeah.
Because we because the edit was so challenging, and because it still, even in its final form, didn't really hit a note of finality like we really wanted to. We didn't put as good a button on the season as we had hoped for. That's when that idea was birthed. What if we put a cold close on the end of the season?
What's cold close? Like, I know what a cold open is.
Well, that's
I've
what it
never
is.
heard the term.
We made it up.
Oh, you made it up?
Yeah.
Coined it.
As far as I know, because it
did.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because it's not possible for a thing at the end to be cold. Because the
Right,
whole point.
right. The whole point of a cold
Have
open
you ever
is
eaten
that
a
you're
dinner?
not warmed. I mean,
Like really slowly?
Yeah. Okay. So the frozen pizza of the season. That sounds terribly appealing.
But anyway, it ended up being really cool, and it kind of energized us right at the end too.
And it was the whole thing was the last minute, like in terms of what it was going to be, and then actually making it, and me writing it up and sending it to you, and then you having to figure out how to do the Borg voice in the first place.
oh yeah.
Which we had to look
That's
up
like
at YouTube.
layers and
Well,
layers
you
and
had
layers.
looked up the YouTube thing, and I looked up the same one prior to you sending me that link. And as I was going through it, whoever was editing it was not using Audition, which is the editing software that I use. And so I was like, this is not going to work for me. But I had already formulated in my mind how I would do it based upon, I knew how they did the TNG recordings. They actually recorded a whole bunch of individual voice actors saying the same lines at the same rate, the same speech patterns. And that's how they did it. So
It just went to Sunday Mass.
Basically, yeah. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up recording one track. All I did was I recorded my own voice one time, reading the lines, and then I opened up a session that had 20 audio files in it, and I just stretched the audio file at a certain rate without changing the pitch, and then I adjusted it back after I exported it, and I just layered that 20 different ways.
Nice.
So
Smart.
I stretched it from 101% all the way up to 120% for each individual one in between, layered it all on top of each other, and put a little bit of reverb, and it sounded. I was so
It was
happy.
great.
Perfect, yeah, no,
it sounded awesome.
Perfect.
So that was fun. That was a fun
Nice.
challenge to work out.
That is very cool.
But the mission, the episode, I loved it. I thought the final mission was a lot of fun. It was
really
a
well.
bitch to record, but the gameplay itself and the mission was very intriguing.
It's also like because what has been fun and what is kind of like I'm like vibrating with energy that I'm just gonna have to sit with it for however long it takes to do the campaign. But it's like, some missions are just like the TV show, standalone episodes, and others are part of some bigger story, right? And it's a matter of like layering in some kind of bigger story into other stuff, and that. Like the season 1 finale is the first where it felt like there's a bigger story going on. Mm-hmm. Like there's other stuff ahead of that, but it's not necessarily noticeable right away. Like the Primum is like there's something bigger going on or to figure out, and even like it goes into there's another mission early in season 2 where like not everything gets wrapped up in a nice bubble at the end. And like I remember you, Tara, you're like, but wait, what about this and what about that? And I'm like, well, we're now at the point where like not everything's gonna be nice and wrapped up.
I'm like, no, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Fix this.
But that was like, and especially with the like putting the cold close in there, that went in with that feeling in the sense of like, okay, now it's not we're just like telling a story over a session. Now we're starting to stitch together something even bigger, which is cool.
Yeah, I can't wait until it doesn't work.
Yeah, me too.
It's gonna be awesome.
Me too.
Well, we're at an hour and 10 basically, so that's probably
pretty good.
and that's the end of the season, right?
That was the end of the
Wrapped it up.
season. We have we also have available for download all of the bonus stuff we released in the halfway mark of season 1.
Intra-season?
Interseason, yeah.
The mid-season break, yeah.
Mid-season, yeah. And so there's a lot of fun content there, and we're hoping to add to that pile in this space between spaces.
God, a Crystal Skull reference?
Sorry.
All right, good night, everybody. All right.
So, to wrap it up, if you're not following us on social media, go follow us at Starship Tempest at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Look us up on Patreon and check out our rewards there. We're going to be doing more supplemental episodes sort of like this and talking about Lower Decks and Picard and Discovery and fun stuff like that. And then also we want to do some more like Twitch, maybe some live stream Twitch, YouTube stuff here in the near future. So stay tuned for all of that. And eventually, Season 2 will begin. And we will figure out when that will be.
Yeah. In the meantime, we'll see you
out there.
Oh, Brian. What a jerk.